Hey dear viewers of our true crime channel. Today we're diving deep into a dark and intricate case that led to some haunting consequences. Almost any one of us could find ourselves caught up in such a situation. Just how much do you trust your friends, family, or significant others? So grab a cup of tea or coffee and settle in. Let's kick off our investigation. In the small town of San Salvador, the evening settles in as residents prepare for the Day of the Dead celebrations in 1995. This holiday is rich with vibrant traditions and deep cultural roots. The city fills with the tantalizing aromas of local cuisine, tortillas, chili, and sweet treats shaped like skulls. People gather to honor their ancestors, reminiscing about those who've passed on. Elaborate altars adorned with flowers, candles, and photographs of the departed take center stage. Dolores, a 22-year-old waitress at the local cafe Song of Life, grapples with feelings of despair as her dreams of becoming an actress remain unfulfilled. With her tan skin, long dark hair, and almond-shaped brown eyes filled with warmth and hope, she has always been passionate about theater, attending performances and participating in school plays. However, growing up in a large family meant her aspirations took a backseat. Her parents couldn't afford drama school. She grew up in a crowded flat where financial struggles and her parents' constant bickering robbed her of peace and comfort. Poverty and tension permeated her childhood, with her mother juggling multiple jobs while her father was often stressed about money. Dolores witnessed countless family arguments, leaving a mark on her soul. Retreating to her room with classic literature, she dreamed of a life beyond her circumstances. In school, she shone as an active student and quickly gained recognition for her talent, participating in drama clubs and productions, always longing to hit the big stage. However, as reality set in, those around her began to doubt her potential, and her dreams faded under the weight of harsh truths. As Dolores matured, she took a job at the cafe to help her family. Despite the monotony of work, she poured her heart into it, engaging with customers and fostering a warm atmosphere. But the demands of her job pushed her acting ambitions aside. Nevertheless, that spark of hope remained alive in her heart. While getting ready for the Day of the Dead festivities, she donned a beautiful dress and adorned her hair with flowers, honoring tradition. This custom connected her with those she had lost, allowing her to express her memories. At the cafe, Dolores contributed to the festive vibe by stringing up garlands and decorating the walls. Conversations about the celebration with her coworkers energized her, and she hoped that this evening might inspire her or possibly open new doors. All night, she watched her neighbors prepare for the festivities, buzzing with excitement. Though her dreams seemed distant, this evening was important. It was her chance to touch her heritage and remember her deepest desires. Dolores stood behind the counter at the cozy Song of Life, where locals and tourists gathered from morning till night. That evening, amidst the lively celebration of the Day of the Dead, a new customer walked in, capturing her attention. The door swung open, and in stepped Ricardo. Ricardo had an imposing presence. He was of average height, but had a broad chest and a confident stance. He sported a fitted leather jacket that exuded both style and authority, while a black mask adorned with golden patterns concealed much of his face, leaving only his expressive dark eyes visible. Those eyes sparkled with an enigmatic fire, a blend of confidence and unbridled energy. They were so captivating that Dolores found it hard to look away. In his hand, Ricardo carried a plastic bag, releasing the mouth-watering scents of food, adding to the intrigue. His slightly disheveled dark hair only added to his mysterious appearance. He seemed like a character straight out of an old noir film, the enigmatic stranger with a shadowy past. Approaching the counter with measured confidence, he ordered a cup of black coffee and a couple of cinnamon rolls. His voice was deep and melodic, a stark contrast to his dark demeanor. He moved with an air of someone who owned the room, rather than just a visitor. Dolores noticed him squint slightly, as if assessing the surroundings, but the moment he spoke to her, his demeanor shifted. He began with a light joke about how challenging it was to find good coffee on such a busy day, when the entire town was immersed in festivities. The joke landed perfectly, lifting her spirits and unexpectedly making her feel more at ease around him. What began as a light banter slowly evolved into a playful exchange. Ricardo threw curious, albeit peculiar, questions her way about the holiday and the culture of remembering the dead. He inquired about her feelings regarding the celebration, probing into whether she felt lost in life. His curiosity dripped with genuine intrigue rather than just polite conversation. In that instant, Dolores realized that, despite his charming demeanor, there was an underlying tension in her chat with Ricardo, almost like a thrilling mystery novel. She couldn't know that his interest in her life was anything but coincidental. Ricardo might possess knowledge about her family and past, suggesting that he needed more from her than just coffee. Yet, all of this remained shrouded in mystery. Still, Dolores felt a connection budding between them, a sense that her routine life, confined within the walls of the cafe, could shift entirely if she allowed people like Ricardo into it. Each glance, each word from him resonated deeply, echoing her unfulfilled yearning for adventure and new possibilities. As they carried on with their conversation, the lights of the festival outside spilled vibrant colors through the cafe's windows, creating a vivid contrast against the darkness of Ricardo's mask. Time slipped away unnoticed as she became engrossed in the magic of their interaction. One thing was clear. This evening could mark the start of something extraordinary. What that could be was anyone's guess. Ricardo quickly gained Dolores's trust, sharing tales about his family and their traditions. He recounted growing up in a small town where each generation honored their ancestors and celebrated the Day of the Dead with sincerity. These stories fostered an atmosphere of honesty and closeness, and Dolores was charmed by his charisma and confidence. While they found common ground discussing traditions, his answers remained delightfully elusive, particularly when it came to his life before returning home. During the celebrations, the atmosphere buzzed with joy and excitement. Music filled the air, and townspeople danced, creating vibrant, unforgettable scenes against the flickering lights. Noticing how Dolores had begun to relax in his company, Ricardo suggested they step outside the noisy cafe to gaze at the stars. They climbed a small hill where the din of the festivities faded into a soft background hum, and the air was infused with the scent of flowers and the freshness of the night. Under the starlit sky, Ricardo swept Dolores into a dance. His movements were smooth and confident, as if he were part of this magical world, enchanting her in the process. They twirled amid the lights that sparkled like reflections of their emotions. He spoke of his dreams for freedom and success, of wanting to break free from the chains that once bound him. These conversations drew Dolores in deeper, igniting her desire to understand him. Despite the brave way he shared his ambitions, there was an underlying tension in his tone and unease regarding something uncertain that lingered from his past. In that moment, Dolores realized just how captivated she was by this mysterious man. She hung on to every word, curious about what lay beneath his charm. His ability to intrigue her and build trust felt like a sign that she could open up to him, despite her hesitations. With each passing minute, her heart swelled with the feeling that this evening could change not only her life, but Ricardo's as well. Yet, outside their little bubble, events continued to unfold that could shatter this idyllic moment. Dolores noticed, lurking in the shadows of the trees, several figures watching them, whispering words that sounded ominous. A strange sense of unease settled in her heart, but Ricardo, with his arm wrapped around her waist and a smile on his face, unknowingly reassured her. Her yearning to uncover his story intensified. The myriad of mysteries and hidden aspects of his life gradually became intertwined with her own ambitions and dreams for the future. The stars twinkled above them, and the tension that hung in the air became increasingly palpable. Dolores felt a strong urge to unravel the enigma that Ricardo hid within his soul. This moment was pivotal. She was prepared to lay her heart bare, hoping that her feelings for this enigmatic man, who concealed parts of his story, might unite them in a deeper connection. A month had passed since Dolores first met Ricardo during the Day of the Dead celebrations, and their relationship soon began to reveal contradictions. Still, Dolores held on to her hope for better things, her heart firmly believing that she could help Ricardo conquer his inner demons. However, The starry sky from their last encounter began to cloud over as uncertainties and worries grew in their lives. One day, Dolores met Letitia, Ricardo's friend, who came to the cafe for lunch. Letitia immediately caught Dolores' attention with her lively spirit and infectious energy. After lengthy conversations and playful exchanges, Dolores sensed a close connection between Letitia and Ricardo, realizing that her perspective on him might be significant. With a cheerful smile, Letitia began to share Ricardo's past. She mentioned that he had battled dark aspects of his life involving drugs and violence for quite some time. Her eyes reflected compassion, filled with concern for his fate. "He's just struggling with the mistakes of his past," she said, and Dolores felt an immediate connection, empathy flooding her thoughts. Letitia added that patience was essential. "We all face our demons, and some overcome them more easily than others." Dolores found solace in these words. At that moment, she understood that she wasn't alone in her quest to help and comprehend Ricardo. Yet, as time went on, Ricardo's strange habits began to trouble her. His frequent nighttime disappearances raised eyebrows among coworkers and acquaintances. Nobody knew where he disappeared to after sunset, but it was clear he was avoiding friends in public spaces. He consistently reminded Dolores of the importance of privacy, emphasizing its necessity in their relationship. Gradually, Ricardo's level of control began to escalate. He pushed for Dolores to quit her job and cut ties with old friends. "You need to focus on us," he insisted, his tone conveying an undeniable pressure that seeped into her core. Initially, she interpreted these demands as concern, a desire to protect her from the outside world. Each of his requests appeared justified, and thoughts of a future with him began to drown out her anxieties. However, Letitia grew increasingly worried about the changes in Ricardo's demeanor. His habits turned more reclusive, and the confidence he once had faded, replaced by a troubling paranoia. She fretted for her new friend. Every conversation with Dolores became an earnest effort to convey her concerns. "Being with Ricardo isn't exactly what you think it is. I know he seems great, but I've seen different sides of him," Letitia tried to explain, but Dolores dismissed her warnings. She believed that Ricardo genuinely cared for her, interpreting his behavior as love. With each passing day, Dolores felt compelled to hide her feelings from her friends and family, and Letitia's persistent allusions to her worries felt increasingly foreign. Letitia tried to explain how men with dark pasts often demand total commitment and submission from their partners. "This could end badly. I know what I'm talking about," she warned. One night, as silence descended on the town, broken only by the whisper of the wind, Ricardo sat in the dim light of his apartment, rubbing his temples as if to ward off a growing headache. The cheerful ticking of the clock on the wall filled the atmosphere when he noticed a message pop up on his phone. It was an unexpected text from an old acquaintance, Pablo. The brief phrases within the message hinted at a threatening intent. Pablo was known as a crime boss, someone Ricardo had crossed paths with years ago. He was a key figure in the seedy dealings involving drugs and violence. The message served as a reminder that his past had yet to let him go. "If you don't get back to your old ways, I'll tell Dolores what you did," it read. Ricardo's heart raced, and he felt the blood rush to his face. He knew Pablo wasn't joking. This threat could shatter his world, especially his relationship with Dolores. Anger overwhelmed Ricardo, and he awaited the right moment to unleash his pent-up emotions. Suppressing his fear, he resolved not to let his past interfere with his present. But all his resolve seemed futile as he glanced back at his phone screen, lost in dark thoughts once again. That evening, he met Dolores as usual, but the tension in the air was palpable from the first glance. Subdued and anxious, he unwittingly steered their conversation into darker territories, tinged with distrust and aggression. Noticing his low spirits, Dolores tried to draw him out by asking about his day, but each of her smiles only seemed to irritate him further. When he couldn't hold back any longer, his voice escalated. Ricardo accused her of not understanding him, claiming he was sacrificing everything for her while always tethered to a dark world. He wove strange connections between their current issues and his old acquaintances. It was one simple sentence that pierced her like a knife. "If you knew that I wasn't just a bunch of words, you wouldn't ask such questions." With all his fury redirected towards Dolores, he lost control in an instant. Caught up in the heat of the moment, his hand rose. He didn't want to hurt her, but in that second, the rage consumed him. Dolores stepped back in horror. It was the moment when the boundaries of what was acceptable had been crossed. After realizing what he had done, Ricardo's state only worsened. He retreated into himself, leaving Dolores feeling shocked and crushed in the room. Confusion and horror filled her eyes at the thought that someone she considered a loved one could behave so monstrously. But leaving him felt nearly impossible. They had only been together for a few months, and her mind, like an analytical machine, scrambled to find justifications for his actions. The events of those days were intertwined with a sense of pressure and real danger that loomed over them. Dolores found herself trapped in a relationship haunted by Ricardo's past sins and dark dealings. She couldn't gather her thoughts, as every little movement heightened her internal struggle. Should she stay or should she go? Despite the physical violence, her mind lingered on the hope that he might change. That night, silence hung heavily in the air. Only the eerie rustling sounds, illuminated by the stark light from the window, highlighted the remnants of shattered hopes. She knew that despite his love and passion, he could easily slip back into the dark world he had been struggling to escape for so long. Refusing to admit that his past might never fully release him, Dolores found herself teetering on the edge, cursing her dependency on him. Days passed after the incident, and uncertainty enveloped Dolores's life. Though she attempted to ignore the violence that had transpired between them, her instincts warned her of the lurking danger. She couldn't help but question who Ricardo truly was, and her intuition nudged her towards seeking answers. One day, when Ricardo was caught in his habitual nightly absence, Dolores decided to venture into the basement of their apartment, a place she had never entered before. Her sole desire was to uncover the secrets hidden in this dark and dreary corner. The basement was filled with old furniture and dust, the musty smell tightening around her throat, yet she pressed on, examining every corner. On a table coated in dust, she spotted a rusted chainsaw. A chill ran through her as she picked it up and realized it bore clear signs of usage. Memories of Ricardo mentioning his handyman work came to her, but a chainsaw didn't seem like something for minor repairs. A wave of anxiety washed over her, compelling her to explore further. Against the wall, she found a pile of bloody clothes. A dress splattered with something red suggested a potential violent incident. It hit Dolores hard. This was not merely a tool for work, it was an alarming internal warning. Shock settled in as she realized her life concealed darker secrets than she had ever imagined. Thoughts raced through her mind about the medications she had heard of, illicit drugs that had gone missing from pharmacies lately. In that same basement, she discovered packages of pills that, at first glance, seemed ordinary but bore obvious signs of illegal trafficking. This wasn't just a warning, it was clear evidence that Ricardo might not be the person he claimed to be. Feeling her life at risk, Dolores understood that she needed to take control of the situation. She envisioned the potential consequences if Ricardo were to find out that she had begun uncovering the truth. In that basement, she made a firm decision: she needed to run. But escaping wasn't as simple as packing her bags and walking out. She began to map out a plan. The first step was gathering evidence of his criminal activities. Dolores took notes in a notebook, documenting every detail she could identify: the presence of the illegal drugs, the location of the chainsaw, and specifics about the bloody clothing. She recognized that these facts could be crucial for her safety if she decided to contact the authorities. She also committed to digging deeper into Ricardo's background and his connections to the criminal underworld. She recalled how his friend Pablo, the crime boss, had threatened him, and how he might be intricately linked to Ricardo's dark past. Those conversations echoed in her mind, prompting her to realize Ricardo had always avoided discussing his history. This left her with unsettling thoughts about whether he had accomplices or if other criminal elements could be tied to him. To execute her plan, Dolores decided to establish a covert contact with Leticia, her friend, whom she believed might have information about Ricardo. She thought Leticia could provide insights about his behavior and past. By engaging her, Dolores hoped to clarify the murky waters surrounding their lives. At the same time, she needed to keep a close eye on Ricardo's every move. She began to align her actions with his absences, carefully timing her investigations, knowing that his return could spell danger. However, planning her escape was no simple task, as Ricardo's unpredictable nature posed a threat she desperately tried to understand and analyze. Thus, Dolores found herself entrenched in a precarious situation, where her life hinged on potential steps based on scant information and hidden clues concealed in the basement. She was acutely aware that she had to act quickly if she wanted to save herself and possibly others who might encounter Ricardo and his criminal past. Dolores realized she could no longer linger in the shadows. She had no choice but to install hidden cameras around the apartment to document Ricardo's actions and gather enough evidence against him. She hoped the cameras would not only capture instruments of crime, but also reveal his true activities. Setting up the equipment in various spots throughout the apartment from the kitchen to the basement gave her a sense of agency. It assured her that she was not merely a victim but an active participant in shaping her destiny. However, her hopes soon crumbled. One day, upon returning home, Ricardo noticed the carelessly left camera hidden in the corner of one of the rooms. Rage filled his eyes, darkening his expression as he erupted into a furious tirade. "You're spying on me?" he shouted, each word landing like a blow. The true face of Ricardo emerged. He threatened her, demanding explanations for her actions. "Do you even know who you're dealing with? I can make it so your family disappears without a trace." Dolores could not brush off Ricardo's words. His menacing reputation confirmed that he had a knack for intimidation. She felt ensnared in a trap. Every threat stirred fear in her, yet simultaneously pushed her to take action. She knew her only option was to seek help. A thought crossed her mind: perhaps Pablo could be of use. She didn't fully trust Pablo due to his dubious background, but it was her only avenue. Dolores managed to find his number, which she had committed to memory from previous encounters. After several agonizing seconds weighing her decision, she dialed. When Pablo picked up, he seemed surprised by her call, but his tone changed quickly as he listened to her story. "You didn't know what kind of person he is," he stated, almost encouragingly before offering his assistance. But Pablo had his own agenda concerning Ricardo. He didn't just want to help, he aimed to set a trap to catch Ricardo red-handed. The next move was straightforward yet perilous. Pablo proposed that Dolores play a role in the setup, linking all of Ricardo's actions directly to his criminal enterprises. He advised her on how to organize the evidence. This could involve drug trafficking or deals Ricardo was attempting to broker. Thus, a complex collaboration developed between Pablo and Dolores. As Dolores tried to put her plan into action with Pablo, she began receiving threats through text messages and calls from unknown numbers. The messages were direct and menacing, confirming that someone was watching her, and it was clear this person had ties to Ricardo. Some messages hinted at her family, while others threatened to expose her secrets. Dolores felt terror gnawing at her mind, leaving her in deep isolation. Dark forces surrounded her at every turn, reminding her of the inevitable exposure lurking just around the corner. The courage with which she fought against her circumstances faced resistance at every corner. She had to mask her anxiety from Letitia and friends to prevent them from suspecting anything was amiss. Each day passing by Ricardo, she strove to appear normal, even as a storm of dread brewed inside her. Communication problems and threats kindled Dolores's urge to escape, but she understood that if she didn't keep fighting now, she might completely lose the chance to save herself and her family. Paranoia grew stronger with each passing minute, making her feel trapped in a cage despite her efforts to push back against it. She was caught between two feelings: the desire to empower herself and find a way out, or to give in to fear and freeze in place, worrying about the repercussions. It was time to act. Despite the escalating tension, she knew she needed to make a life-changing choice: to cling to the fragile thread of hope, or retreat into shadows and abandon her fight. As night fell over the city, wrapping it in darkness and silence, Dolores, exhausted from constant anxiety, decided to step outside for a moment to grab some fresh air and attempt to distract herself from the nightmares swirling in her mind. The city looked different in the dark. The empty houses seemed to watch sadly from the streets. Harsh shadows flitted along the walls, reflecting her inner fear. But as she took a few steps, the creaking of a door echoed behind her. Ricardo slipped smoothly from the shadows. His presence filled the air with immediate tension. With a scowl, he grabbed her by the hand, leaving her no chance to resist, and pulled her along. She knew where he was taking her, but she couldn't muster the strength to protest. His confidence and determination loomed over her, making her feel utterly defenseless. He brought her to an abandoned house on the outskirts of town, a place where he had once worked with Pablo. As Ricardo noticed her comprehension of their location, he became even more aggressive. "You didn't think this would just blow over, did you?" he said, slamming the door behind her. The room was dark, with shabby walls and a grimy floor where dust mingled with a musty odor. A sense of menace hung in the air, and she realized this wouldn't just be a confrontation, it would be an interrogation. Trembling with fear, Dolores tried to keep her composure. "Ricardo, you can change your life. We can start fresh," she suggested, hoping to appeal to his rational side. But all she saw in his eyes was fury. "What do you know about struggling your whole life, knowing that no one is waiting for you?" He shot back, his voice a chilling threat. Every sound in his tone reminded her just how easily he could turn violent. Ricardo began grilling her about everything she might know regarding Pablo, his plans to bury his past and piece together a new life. Dolores could have stayed quiet, but she attempted to explain the importance of recognizing the consequences of cruelty and latent aggression. Each of her answers was met with another explosion of rage from Ricardo, and she felt the comforting illusion of friendship she had clung to begin to shatter. Meanwhile, across town, Leticia and Pablo, recognizing that Ricardo's actions were becoming increasingly unpredictable, were devising a plan to eliminate him. "If we don't stop him now, he'll reach her, and it'll be catastrophic," Leticia said, her face mirroring her deep concern for her friend. Pablo, knowing there could be no mercy for Ricardo, agreed. "We need to call the police." Obviously, he added, aware the situation was complex. During their discussion about potential strategies, Pablo laid out a plan aimed at portraying Ricardo in the worst light possible, playing to his vulnerabilities. Leticia, confident in the elegance of the strategy, felt overwhelmed by confusion and anxiety, still fearing for Dolores's life. But despite their efforts, everything unraveled. When Leticia and Pablo arrived at the abandoned house, they found it locked, while Ricardo had already started committing horrific acts against Dolores. Without missing a beat, Pablo pulled out the hidden weapon he always carried, aiming it at the door. At a signal, they stormed inside, initiating their plan, only to find themselves in a shocking climax. In the midst of the conflict with Dolores, Ricardo noticed Pablo and Leticia. His rage and insanity peaked. He began to draw his weapon, and chaos erupted. In that instant, Leticia wasted no time and fired at Ricardo. The deafening crack of the gunshot shattered the night. Though wounded, Ricardo reacted quickly, firing back and hitting both Leticia and Dolores. The sounds of gunfire, anger, and madness mixed with the screams of the victims. The noise attracted the attention of neighbors, and soon blue lights from police cars were flashing at the end of the street, rushing to the scene. Finally, after several minutes of tension when everything seemed lost, the police burst into the house. Ricardo, bleeding profusely, was swiftly apprehended and arrested. Meanwhile, Leticia and Dolores lay on the floor, bleeding out and gradually losing consciousness. Flashes from cameras illuminated their bodies as their confusion about the situation was starkly reflected in the dancing shadows. An ambulance arrived, and both women were taken to the hospital. They found themselves in the operating room, where the silence of their thoughts was palpable. Isolated, they clung to one thought: their stories had to be heard. Dolores resolved she would tell her story to warn others about how easily one could find themselves wrapped up in a sinister cycle of obsession and extreme relationships. She understood this would be her way to regain strength and help those facing similar dark circumstances. After difficult days in the hospital, Dolores and Leticia began their recovery journey. Yet, beyond the medical units, a new battle commenced: the trial against Ricardo. His arrest sent shockwaves through the community, triggering a flurry of rumors. The tales of his violent crimes gradually emerged, attracting the attention of local media and investigators, who had spent years meticulously gathering evidence linking him to the criminal underworld. Ricardo had long been known for his unstable behavior and criminal tendencies since his teenage years. He grew up in a troubled family where violence and crime were commonplace. As a teenager, he took his first steps into the world of crime. Burglary, robbery, and petty offenses became a part of his life. As he matured, he dove deeper into darker businesses. People referred to him as an associate of Pablo, the crime lord, spending time with him while learning from more seasoned criminals. Among the elements of his criminal activities included drug trafficking. Ricardo was an active participant in the drug distribution network in the city. His name frequently appeared in police reports tied to large drug seizures. He organized covert shipments, drawing in several accomplices who assisted him in distributing illegal substances. Blackmail and extortion. Rumors of his multiple blackmail schemes circulated among business and criminal circles. Some victims found themselves forced to pay ransoms for their secrets, impacting both business owners and ordinary individuals. Ricardo leveraged his connections to terrify his victims, threatening to unleash compromising information. Physical violence. Frequently observed displaying aggressive behavior, he often resorted to physical force to resolve his issues. Former partners and acquaintances gossiped about instances of violence in his circle. Tales about how he dealt with those he considered threats were widely known. A glaring example of his brutality was the numerous arrests he faced for assaults and threats. Smuggling. He was also implicated in smuggling cases. His basement served as a center for storing and shipping prohibited items that slipped past customs checkpoints. This hidden space concealed drugs and weapons that were used to further his illicit operations. The trial against Ricardo was taking place in criminal court, and the atmosphere was suffocating. The courtroom was packed with viewers, many of whom were familiar with his notorious criminal background. Dolores knew her testimony would be crucial in this case, and she prepared for the proceedings like never before. The trial commenced with opening statements from both sides. The prosecutor focused on Ricardo's crimes, detailing his past misdeeds. Police reports documenting his arrests, taped conversations with his associates, and various pieces of evidence painted a damning picture of his criminal history. Throughout the trial, Ricardo's defense attorney attempted to cast his client in a more sympathetic light, claiming he was a victim of circumstances and the influence of his surroundings. He referenced Ricardo's complicated family dynamics and his desire to break free from his criminal past. While these arguments failed to resonate with most attendees, they reminded Dolores of her own ongoing struggle. The defining moment came with Dolores' testimony. She recounted how Ricardo had manipulated her, exploiting her fears for his own gain. She explained that his actions caused trauma not just to her, but to other women who might have faced his aggression. Each of her words served as a clarion call for justice. After several weeks of questioning and hearings, the jury returned with their verdict. Ricardo was found guilty on multiple counts: physical violence, possession of illegal substances, threats, and extortion. The judge sentenced him to 12 years in prison, with the possibility of parole only after 8 years. Additionally, the court awarded Dolores compensation for the emotional and physical harm she suffered due to Ricardo's crimes. While this amount couldn't return her to a normal life, it provided at least a small measure of solace for all she had endured. The trial marked the beginning of a new chapter for both women. Dolores decided to become an advocate, speaking at forums dedicated to relationship violence and collaborating with local organizations that assist victims. Letitia, also having recovered, chose to start her own new chapter by engaging in volunteer work. The road to recovery was long. Yet, Dolores and Letitia discovered immense strength in their stories. They began sharing their experiences, imparting lessons learned to others to prevent them from making the same mistakes. With every story, they transformed from victims into powerful advocates, from silent observers to empowered voices. Dolores' story is more than just a tale of love and betrayal. It's a powerful reminder of the importance of recognizing toxicity and courageously seeking a way out. Even after the darkest events, she found the strength to begin anew. With her experience, Dolores became a beacon of hope and support for others who face similar trials, voicing the struggles of those trapped in a grim reality of violence and fear. This intricate and harrowing narrative sheds light on the dark side of love, illustrating how obsession can lead to devastating consequences, often tearing lives apart. That's why it's vital to seek support during tough times and to never face hardships alone. If Dolores' story has touched you, remember to share it and seek help if you or someone you know needs it. We all deserve to live in a world free from fear and violence. Thank you for joining us. Subscribe to our channel to catch new stories that inspire and awaken strength and hope within us. Take care of yourself and your loved ones.